I don't care what anyone says, Ironheart is easily a top 3 MCU TV show. The last 3 episodes gave us the Hood's origin, Riri stepping into a new Ironheart suit, and some amazing writing with an amazing cast. Not to mention, we finally got the introduction of Mephisto. What's going on, Marvelites? Let's dig into episodes 4 through 6 of Ironheart. I'm not gonna lie, this show had some really good writing and storytelling all within 6 episodes. And part of that, I think, really has to go towards Riri's storyline and seeing her dealing with grief and trauma and her processing that in her own way. I think that's something that we can all relate to because we've all probably experienced the loss of a loved one and experienced grief at some point in our lives. And I really love this because it is very accurate to the comics and what we saw in Eve Ewing's run of Ironheart, where we saw Riri dealing with trauma and flashbacks and really just wanting her to rely on herself and not really wanting to be a part of a team, even though it was very evident that she needed outside help. And we kind of got to see that in this show where she eventually realized that she needed help. She needed to rely on her friends and her family, not only for dealing with trauma with the loss of Natalie and her father, but also just realizing that she wasn't able to do the whole tech thing versus the magic thing, which leads me into the next part of why the show was so good. We finally got to see more of tech versus magic. I really love the way that Ryan Coogler and his team brought this to life. We didn't get over the top magic like we've seen with WandaVision and even in Doctor Strange or even Agatha all along. But I love the very subtleties of the magic, especially that we got to see in episodes 4 through 6 with Mrs. Stan and Zelma Stan and how they kind of incorporated that in with Riri. And I'm not gonna lie, Regan Aaliyah as Zelma Stan is crushing it. And if we don't see her again in some sort of project, maybe Strange Academy would be nice, Marvel, would be nice. I'm gonna be very upset if we don't ever get to see her again. And also, we need a team up of Mrs. Stan and Jennifer Kale. Like, they need to open a storefront and we need to see them in a project together. But also, speaking of magic, we also got the Hood's origin, which kind of deviated a little bit from the comics, which is totally fine. But I loved seeing that like grounded perspective of what Parker Robbins really wanted and dealing with family issues. Again, something that a lot of us can probably relate to. A big theme that we got with Parker in general is just power and being power hungry, right? He continued to get more and more power through the Hood, almost like he needed it. And when the Hood was taken away from him, you could see he was distraught and like he needed something. He was almost like a junkie. And I really love that we were getting very close to that demonic figure of the Hood that we've actually seen in the comics. But I think that all relates back to the Hood's origins, at least in terms of this show and how it's related to Mephisto. Now, in the comics, the Hood actually receives its power through Dormammu, which was a misdirect by Coogler and his team in episode 4. But having it be connected to Mephisto also makes sense and totally works. And we finally got that introduction to Mephisto, which I thought was done very well. I didn't know what to expect from Sacha Baron Cohen, but I think he played the hell out of Mephisto. And I love that they didn't necessarily make him just this red devil like we've seen in the comics. Although in that one very subtle scene that you can see in a still, you can see some red in the spoon when he's stirring his coffee. But in that, you heard Mephisto talk about all the deals that he's done with top corporation business owners and 3 popes and all of these things, right? And it just goes to show you that that theme of power is very corrupting, and obviously we can all kind of see how that is relating to the real world right now. Not only that, this show just felt like classic MCU. We went back to the roots of not using nanotech anymore for Riris Suit, and it was nice to see that actually play out, and just that montage of her and the rest of her friends and her family working with her to build that suit, which was dope, by the way. I think that was so nice to see, along with all the practical effects, not only from like a money-saving perspective for the project, but in general, practical effects seem to be doing much better right now in terms of just putting everyone in front of a green screen. The best and the worst part about this show, in my opinion, is it set up so many things to happen after it. This show clearly needs a second season. It was done so well, and the way that it ended with Riri talking with Mephisto, the whole time you could see that they were kind of just planning what Mephisto had, and I felt like they were just planting that seed of what she could have and having Natalie back in her life. And that is obviously something that Riri has wanted for so long. But the whole time I'm watching that, you're just like, Riri's not gonna do this. She's not gonna do this. It's just, they're just playing it out, and she's gonna walk out of that restaurant and that's gonna be that. But when you saw that demonic vein come through her arm as she's hugging Natalie, Oh my goodness. I was so mad. I went to bed so angry. Like I couldn't go to bed for like 15 minutes because I was so angry and pissed off that she made that decision. I kind of really like that they went with that storyline though, because now we're going to see a hero who's going to have to go through even more stuff and not necessarily come out on the winning side. And even though it's so easy to say that like Riri shouldn't have done that, I totally get the reasoning why. Like that's how she's processing her trauma and her grief. And she wants her best friend back. She wants her back so bad. So much so that she ended up making her as an AI just by processing through her brain, right? Like she wants that so bad, and it's hard to say how any of us would also take that deal. But not only that storyline, we've got the introduction of even more magic within the MCU, right? We've got Mrs. Stan and Zelma, who are a part of Strange Academy in the comics. And I feel like we kind of need, again, I'll say it again, we need some Strange Academy show. We need it, Marvel. We need it. And not only that, we have Mephisto. But knowing what we know, this was made and developed back in the Bob Chapek era of Disney and when he was running it. And that's when they were just like pushing out shows and just greenlighting everything during COVID. But Marvel has kind of changed their tune in terms of how many projects they're putting out per year and what the future is looking like in terms of output and movies and shows and all of those things. And with that being said, we know that Fantastic Four is going to be out pretty quickly after this, and that this whole year just in general is probably the biggest year of, you know, output from Marvel in general, and they're scaling back significantly. And their next big thing is Doomsday and supposedly 2 Secret Wars movies. And then after that, it's, you know, we're looking at maybe a soft reboot that's supposedly happening, and then we're somehow introducing X-Men into this whole thing. I find it very hard to believe that they're going to say, yeah, let's make another season of the show. I really hope that they do, but I find it hard to believe. And I really feel like Ryan Coogler is going to have to push Disney and Marvel to be like, we need to make this show. I can make it good. And at this point, they might as well just give Ryan Coogler all the money he wants and just say, whatever project you want, it's greenlit, because I would do that. The man has a proven track record of how good he is with all of his projects. Just give him what he wants and let him do what he wants, because you know it's going to crush. You just know it's going to crush. If we do get a second season or some sort of follow-up on this, it's probably going to be either a side story and maybe some of the Secret Wars stuff, or it's going to end up being a second season like after Secret Wars is done, which we're probably looking at like at least 5 years. And at that point, you know, we're in the same territory as Shang-Chi, The Eternals, Moon Knight, all of these shows that we've all wanted to be continued on, but they just haven't for lots of reasons. I'm not gonna lie, I'm still pissed with how Marvel rolled this show out. The marketing was not very good, and the fact that they dropped it over 2 weeks still pisses me off. This show would have been so good as a week-to-week drop. After episode 5, everyone would have been pissed and just like waiting for episode 6. We would have talked about that so much for an entire week. We would have talked about that for so much for an entire week. I really think Marvel fumbled the bag. They were more worried about grifters and chuds than anything else. Hopefully they will learn their lesson. I'm glad that it's getting good reviews. If you enjoyed the show, let me know where you would rank it in your MCU TV shows or in MCU Phase 5. If you want more content like this, make sure you hit that like and subscribe. And until the next video, Excelsior.